The Dark Lord Sauron had spies everywhere. His gaze stretched across Middle-earth. His Nazgûl hunted in the shadows. His armies numbered in the hundreds of thousands. He had dominated kings, corrupted wizards, and brought entire civilizations to their knees. And yet, he lost everything to a handful of small, barefoot farmers from a place he didn't even know existed. How is that possible? How could the most powerful evil force in Middle-earth be defeated by creatures he had never heard of, from a land he couldn't find on a map? The answer reveals something terrifying about Sauron, and something profound about the nature of evil itself. In this video, we're uncovering the blind spot that destroyed the Dark Lord. Here's a fact that will shock most fans. Sauron didn't know the Shire existed. For the longest time, Sauron was not even aware of the Shire's existence. It was only through Gollum that he even heard of it, and even then he did not know where it was. Think about that for a moment. The Dark Lord whose eye could pierce the darkness of Mordor, whose gaze could reach across mountains and seas, whose spies reported from every corner of Middle-earth, had no idea there was a peaceful little country full of hobbits just a few weeks' journey from his strongholds. The Shire was invisible to him, not because of magic, not because of some protective spell, but because it simply didn't matter. The Shire was not a direct threat to him, and there was nothing there that he could make use of, until the discovery of the ring itself. The hobbits had no armies, no great warriors, no magical artifacts, no wealth worth plundering, no strategic value whatsoever. To a being like Sauron, obsessed with power and domination, the Shire was less than nothing. It was beneath notice, and this is where his downfall began. Most of the other inhabitants of Middle-earth had no idea that hobbits even exist, much less that a couple of them would be able to sneak all the way to the heart of Mordor to destroy the One Ring. Even the allegedly all-seeing Dark Lord Sauron had no idea that they were around until he found someone who'd already encountered one, basically by chance. But Sauron's ignorance of the Shire wasn't just a practical oversight. It was a symptom of something far deeper: his fundamental inability to understand goodness. Pride in his own abilities was his greatest personal weakness, and this arrogance, coupled with an underestimation of his enemies, would ultimately doom him. Sauron couldn't comprehend why anyone would reject power. He couldn't understand why someone would choose to destroy the ring rather than use it. He couldn't fathom that the smallest, weakest creatures might pose the greatest threat. His entire worldview was built on the assumption that everyone desired power, that everyone could be corrupted, that everyone would eventually bow to superior force. This is why he left Mount Doom completely undefended. Sauron could have guarded Mount Doom. It only would have taken a few orcs stationed outside the Crack of Doom to stop Frodo and Sam in their tracks. But it never occurred to him that someone would attempt to destroy the One Ring. He assumed that anyone who came into possession of the ring would use it to become a conqueror like himself. He literally couldn't imagine anyone doing what Frodo and Sam did. Not because he lacked intelligence. Sauron was brilliant. But because his evil had blinded him to possibilities that existed outside his understanding of how beings behave. When Sauron finally learned about hobbits, he still didn't take them seriously. The words Shire and Baggins were tortured out of Gollum. But even then, Sauron didn't understand what he was dealing with. When the mouth of Sauron speaks to Aragorn at the Black Gate, he describes Frodo as a spy from the little rat land of the Shire. A spy. That's all Sauron's forces thought Frodo was, a mere scout sent ahead by Aragorn. With Aragorn waiting right outside the Black Gate of Mordor, It would make sense that a small spy would be sent in to investigate. It never occurred to Sauron that these little rats might be the actual threat, that the ring-bearer himself was walking through his lands, that two hobbits, tired, hungry, and nearly broken, were carrying the one thing that could destroy him straight to the one place it could be unmade. Sauron was so convinced of his own power, so certain that no one could resist the ring's corruption, that he focused all his attention on Aragorn, on Gandalf, on the armies of men and elves. He was looking for a challenge worthy of his greatness. He was looking for a rival. What he got instead were two gardeners from a country he'd never heard of. Here's what made Sauron's blindness truly fatal. He genuinely believed the ring could not be destroyed. Not by anyone. Ever. Sauron thought it was an impossibility that anyone would dare destroy his ring. No one was beyond its corruption, and it was impossible for anyone to willingly throw it into Mount Doom. This wasn't mere arrogance. It was a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of free will. Sauron had poured so much of his own malice into the ring that he couldn't conceive of anyone resisting it. He had watched the ring corrupt Isildur. He had seen it twist Gollum over centuries. He knew its power intimately, and he was certain, absolutely certain, that no living being could willingly cast it into the fire. And technically, he was right. Frodo couldn't do it. At the crack of doom, after all his suffering, after all his sacrifice, Frodo claimed the ring for himself. Sauron's assumption was correct. No one could willingly destroy the ring. But Sauron didn't account for Gollum, for the twisted creature who bit the ring from Frodo's finger and fell into the flames. Sauron didn't account for pity, for the mercy that Bilbo and Frodo showed to Gollum throughout their journeys. He didn't account for providence, for luck, for the way small acts of kindness can ripple across time and change everything. Sauron's contempt for the small and weak wasn't just a strategic error. It was a moral failure that defined his entire existence. In Tolkien's world, evil often starts with the belief that no one else's beliefs in how we should order our shared world are valid, which is what drives both Sauron and Saruman to lunge for supreme power. Sauron dismissed the Shire because it had no power. He dismissed hobbits because they posed no military threat. He dismissed the very idea that goodness, friendship, and humble courage could overcome his darkness. This is the great irony of Sauron's defeat. He was brought down not by a great warrior, not by a powerful wizard, not by an ancient king reclaiming his throne. He was brought down by the very things he despised: smallness, simplicity, and the stubborn refusal of ordinary folk to give up hope. Quote from Gandalf: "Some believe it is only great power that can hold evil in check, but that is not what I have found. It is the small, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keep the darkness at bay." Sauron never learned this lesson. He couldn't. His entire being was built around the pursuit of domination. The idea that power could flow from love, from loyalty, from the simple courage of a hobbit, this was beyond his comprehension. In the end, Sauron's defeat teaches us something profound about the nature of evil. Evil is powerful. Evil is cunning. Evil can conquer nations and corrupt souls. But evil has a blind spot. It cannot understand goodness. It cannot fathom sacrifice. It cannot imagine that the weak might triumph over the strong, not through superior force, but through superior character. Sauron didn't lose because he was weaker than his enemies. He lost because he couldn't see them. He looked at the Shire and saw nothing. He looked at hobbits and saw vermin. He looked at Mount Doom and saw a fortress that needed no guards. And in each case, his blindness proved fatal. The ring was destroyed not by armies or magic or ancient prophecy. It was destroyed because a gardener from the Shire loved his friend enough to carry him up a mountain. Because two hobbits cared more about each other and their home than about power or glory or survival itself. Sauron never saw it coming. He never could have. And that brings us to the end of this exploration into Sauron's fatal blind spot. If you found this analysis compelling, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. What do you think? Was Sauron's downfall inevitable, given his nature? Or could he have won if he'd simply taken the Shire seriously? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.